Hey guys, this is Eric with Auto Exposure Media, and I have another video to bring you, which is something that I spent a lot of time on. It's putting an action van lift on my 2001 Ford E350 extended body. So I did this project because I really wanted to do this so I'd fully understand everything about my suspension, and I wanted to do a lift because I love lifted vans. So, and I also wanted to do this 100% by myself in my driveway, just to show that it can be done that way. I know a lot of people maybe have attempted it and were not able to succeed at doing it either solo or, so I wanted to make sure I could do it solo. I'm not a mechanic, I'm just a regular guy. I have a lot of tools. I did have to buy some tools to do this job. It was pretty much the hardest thing I've ever done as far as mechanical work. But it is doable. You do need a few special tools, and I'll talk a little bit more about those later. But stay tuned, because this is going to be a cool one. Action van 5-inch suspension lift, done 100% solo in my driveway. Let's go. Okay, the first tools you're going to need are jack stands, and they need to be strong ones that can support the heavy weight of the van. So I got these 12 tons from Harbor Freight, and also these little 3 tons from Harbor Freight as extra jack stands. You also need a floor jack that can lift your van, so I use this one, this Daytona. It would have helped if I even had a second one. As I used tools on this project, I just put them in a box when I was done with them so I would know that I used them. So this is every tool that I used while doing this project. Some of them I used a lot more than others, but this is the complete list of everything that I needed in order to do this job. So take a look at these and you'll see. Now, some of the most important tools on this job was the angle grinder, and you have various cutting wheels and grinding wheels to use. I also used this air hammer a lot. This was important to punch out the rivets when you have to remove the rivets. Rotocut is something I used to cut out the rivets when removing those. It was one of the best methods to do that, aside from the grinding and cutoff wheels. So you might need one of those. Okay, to get the pitman arm off, you have to have one of these type of pitman arm pullers, and this one is a Snap-on CJ11982. This made it really easy to get the pitman arm off, so you might need to get one of these if you don't have one already. You'll need various types of pliers, needle nose, side cutters. These are all the ones I used. I also used these oil filter wrench pliers to hold the shock body of the stock shocks. That was helpful on the rears. The most important tool that I probably used the most is these flex head ratcheting wrenches, especially in size like 17, 19, 22, 24. I used those a lot on the suspension parts. You're also going to need a lot of big sockets. So I had most of these, but I did have to go out and buy a couple of kind of oddball ones that I didn't have. Like the 30 and the 33. The 33 is to get your pitman arm nut off, and the 30 is to get the big bolt that holds your radius arm to the I-beam off. So if you don't have those, make sure you get those ahead of time, because they will be important right away. And then you'll need all these other various impact sockets, especially like 15, 16, 17, 19, 21, 22, and 24. So make sure you got all those ahead of time. Here's all the various ratchets that I used. Breaker bars, 1/2 inch, 3/8, long and short, even a 1/4 inch. You're also going to need torque wrenches. I have these two. This was the smaller one goes to 100 and the larger one goes to 250. Also, various pry bars will help you in separating the suspension parts, and a light is good if you're working at night. I also had a few power tools to help me. The powered ratchet by Milwaukee was great. Also a power drill and impact gun. Also going to need 2 drill bits, a 9/16 and a 1/2. Those are to drill out the holes for the new brackets and the rear shocks. So make sure you have those bits before you start. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is get your vehicle up on the jack stands, and the jack stands go right behind the radius arm brackets. And then take your front wheels off. I didn't show how to do that because I'm pretty sure everybody knows how to get their wheels off, but yeah, so that's how you get your van set up to do this job. Now we're going to remove the steering. Now this is not specific to the Action Van install, but you are going to need a tie rod puller and a pitman arm puller. So grab those and get ready to do this part. First, you're going to remove the cotter pins from all the castle nuts so that you can just take out this entire steering assembly away from the van. So get all your cotter pins out. The factory castle nuts are 21 millimeter. You're just going to use your flex head wrench and spin that off, but don't take it all the way off until you break it loose from the pitman arm. Next, do your tie rods, your tie rod puller on the end of the pitman arm. I use a little bit of penetrating lubricant, and they really just pop right off. So use the impact. And next, you're going to want to remove the pitman arm bolt where it attaches to the steering gear. And in order to get access to it, you're probably going to have to remove or loosen these 3 bolts that hold the steering gear to the frame. So back those out, and then it'll allow you to shift the steering gear forward and expose the nut. Then you take your 33 millimeter socket, and you're going to just be able to put that on the nut and back it off. So as I was setting this up to film it, it actually came off as soon as I even tightened it down, not even that much. So this tool really worked well to get the pitman arm off, and that's one of the things I was worried was going to be one of the harder things to do on this job. So I was glad to see that just came off really easily. Okay, now that your pitman arm is removed, you can remove the steering tie rods from the knuckles. So first start with your cotter pin, get that out of the way. Now you'll need a 21 in order to get the castle nut off, just like on the pitman arm, and loosen that. But don't take it all the way off because you're going to put a tool on there to actually remove the tie rod from the knuckle. Okay, now do this on the other side, and your steering will be completely removed. Now to remove the sway bar, there's only 4 bolts. They're 15 millimeter, and you're going to need to reuse them, so hang on to them. There's 2 holding the bracket on this side and 2 on the other side. There is no sway bar links, they just press into bushings right here, and as you can see my bushings are bad, so I'll be replacing those later in the process. Okay, so on this side I'm going to leave 1 bolt in halfway just so this thing doesn't drop when I take the other 2 out on the other side. Okay, now I'm going to go to the other side and remove that one I left in, and then the sway bar will just drop down, and then you just pull it forward and it will pull out of those bushings. Now we're going to remove the passenger side shock first. So you want to just jack up your I-beam a little bit and take some pressure off so it's not at full droop. Just start to compress the spring just a little bit. For my factory shocks, I used an 18mm on the upper nut, and then on the very top nut I used, I think it was a 17, and I was able to easily access it and get it off like this. When you get it loose enough, you can just reach in with your hand and spin it off. It's a little harder on the driver's side, but I'll show you how I did that in a minute. Next, you want to remove the spring retainer clip at the top. It's a 10mm. Just back that out. Be sure to save this bolt and this spring retainer clip. You're going to need it later. Now you just want to go back to your floor jack and lower that down to full droop again, and you'll see that the shock will come out of the hole on the top and the spring will just fall out of the upper perch. Now you just have to give the spring a little twist once you get it to this point, and it'll come right out. Okay, now you just want to get in there underneath on the back side of the radius arm with an 18mm and back that off. Now you'll just use a pry bar and that'll take the shock off at the bottom. And then just wiggle it and shimmy it out, and that'll do it for the shock. Okay, so some people have some trouble getting these shocks off. I've seen other videos where people have a lot of issues trying to get this driver's side shock off. So I'm just going to show you what I did to do it, and I thought it was really easy. So first you want to soak the top of it with some PB Blaster just to get it down in that in the threads on the top of the shock. So the tool you want to use is this flex head 15mm wrench, ratcheting wrench, and you have to bend the head just like that. And then there's that cutout on the spring perch. You just put the wrench right through there and hook it over top of the shock and right onto the nut. And once you do that, you can take an 18mm wrench and put it on that top bolt that's on the shock itself, and then you can wedge the wrench into the springs, and then you can just start using the ratcheting wrench, and that'll get it off. And yes, you do have to turn it a lot of times because you're only going 1/8 of a turn at a time, but if you stick with it, it'll eventually come off.
Alright, now if you're replacing the bushings for your sway bar, you want to hit it right here. And just keep hitting it around the edges, and then it'll push out to the front side.
Okay, now we're going to remove the radius arms. We're going to do both of them, but here we're going to do it a little bit different than the instructions say. I'm actually going to take off these radius arms and swap in the new radius arms right now. Instead of disassembling everything first and then starting to put it all back together, I'm going to actually put the new radius arm on so I don't have to disconnect the I-beam yet, and at least one point of contact will remain connected to the vehicle. I also don't want to mess with the brakes, and this way I can leave the brakes all hooked up and I don't have to unhook anything there. Okay, now you just want to remove the brackets that hold the radius arm for the frame, and that's just these 3 bolts, 18 millimeter. Now when you remove the radius arm from the I-beam, you'll have a 21 millimeter on top and then your 30 millimeter on the bottom. And this one's on there tight, so you're going to have to use an impact or breaker bar. But it comes off easy with an impact wrench. And you're going to need this bolt again, so hang on to it because you reuse it when you put the new radius arm on. You can see I put a jack stand underneath the I-beam to hold it there. And then I'm using my jack to kind of just help me get this radius arm out of there. But the jack stand is going to hold the I-beam in position so that you can just easily take the new one and put it right on. Now with the radius arms out of the way, you'll have clear access to put the new radius arm brackets on. And before you can put them on, you should clean up anything on the frame. My frame has a little bit of rust, so I'm going to get that off of there with the whiz wheel and just clean it up a little bit so that you have a good surface to mount the new bracket onto. Okay, now we're going to just mount the new bracket right onto the frame with the provided hardware from Action Van. These bolts get a washer and actually a washer on both sides and a nut. When you put them on, don't torque them down, just snug them up a little bit. You'll go back and tighten them later. Okay, once you get the bracket in place, then you can just put the new radius arm in place as well. It's just 2 bolts that hold it on. one through the I-beam and then one through the bracket in the back. And it gives you provided hardware in the Action Van kit to put the radius arm on to the bracket, but you'll use the existing bolt that you took out earlier for the front. Just needs a little persuasion to get it through. Put this one on loose as well, because you're going to need to manipulate things around before you really cinch all this stuff down. Okay, now we're going to remove the I-beams from the pivot brackets. And this is just 2 bolts. And just want to take them both out and let the I-beams drop down to the ground. And that way they're out of the way so we can remove the pivot brackets. You'll just need a 17mm wrench and a 17mm socket to get these bolts out.
These actually look much better than the Ford. These are just rolled steel. These look like they're a much thicker solid steel tube. So to get them out, just hit it with the air hammer, break in a couple of sides, and then just punch it out with the ball joint press, and then press it back in. Here we go. Okay, just like the other one, you want to check and see how much rusty area you're seeing, and that's the depth you should push it in. Don't push it in all the way. You just want to keep it in up to, looks like on this side, about 1/4 inch or so. So, yeah. All right, to prep it, I'm just gonna put a little grease on the outside of this sleeve before it slides in.
When removing these brackets, the first way I tried was using this cutting wheel, and it works pretty good. You know, you cut the mushroom head off that thing, or cut the button head off this rivet, and then you can use your air chisel to get the rest of it off. So that's how I did the first one.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about removing these brackets. There's just a step in the instructions that just says remove the brackets, but there's a lot of different ways you can go about removing the brackets. This is the end result. So the ways that I used was, first, using this was probably my favorite. This is called a rotocut, and you just drill right into the top with a little mushroom on the rivet, and it cuts a circle out like that and leaves you with that sticking into the hole, and you just punch it out with the hammer, the air hammer, and that's it. It's the quietest, it's the least intense. I think the best way to do this is with a torch, you know, some kind of cutting torch like plasma cutter or something, but since I don't have that, I had to rely on an air hammer, air chisel with a punch and kind of this chisel cutting tip. So for the ones you can't use the rotocut on, you can cut them off, like they'll look like this. When you cut this top off, cut that off with the cutting wheel, and then use this to go right underneath it and chisel off anything that's left, and then use the pointy punch with your air hammer to knock it through, and those will look like this. It gets cut off, and then you just punch it through with the punch. So yeah, this was by far the hardest part of the whole install. So be prepared for this. Have yourself a rotocut, a cutting wheel, a grinder, and an air chisel. You probably won't be able to do it without that, or it won't be very fun at all.
This is what your bracket will look like once you get all the rivets out. And in addition to rivets, there's 2 flag bolts on the inside that you'll have to get. And the nuts are kind of hard to access, but you can get at those between the cross member from the front side. Just use a long ratchet or some kind of long tool to get in there and get on those nuts. Okay, before you can attach the new pivot brackets, you're going to have to raise the engine a little bit because there isn't enough clearance to get in here to put the bolts through the holes. You have to make sure the bolts are coming from the top down with the nuts on the bottom. Now, there's 2 bolts on each side that mount the motor to the motor mounts, and you have to loosen those before you raise the engine. So you'll use a piece of wood and a jack to just push the engine up after you loosen these 2 bolts on this side and 2 more bolts on the other side. Now with it lifted up like this, you can put the bolts through from the top, and then you're ready to install your driver's side pivot bracket. Now, just like with the brackets for the radius arms, you want to make sure that you clean off the frame. Any corrosion or rust or undercoating, anything that's on there, you want to give a good surface for the pivot bracket to mount to. So just clean it up best you can, get all the crap off of there. Okay, now we're going to install the passenger side relocation bracket, and even though it's for the passenger side, the actual bracket is on the driver's side of the vehicle. So now just loosely install it with some the included hardware, and don't tighten it down too much, just snug it up so that it's in the right location. And then you're going to mark anywhere that there's a hole in the bracket and not a hole in the cross member. So how I did it is I just used a punch, metal punch, and I just marked the hole, and then I took the bracket off and drilled it. I just center punched it to make it easier, and then I'm going to drill a pilot hole and then the full-size hole. Knowing what I know now, I might have just drilled right through the hole in the bracket. That seems like it would have been better to do, but this is how I did it. Either way will work. I'm not going to go all the way through with the pilot hole. I'm just going to get it most of the way through like this, and then you have to be really careful about drilling through, especially on this one, because there's a lot of things above the above that cross member. Like, I don't know if they're air conditioning lines, oil cooler lines, transmission cooler lines. There's a bunch of things up there. You just have to be careful not to drill through them. Okay, here's what it'll look like when you're ready to install the bracket. Now you can just bolt up your bracket and tighten it down. This is the time that if you ordered the kit that came with the steering stabilizer, you do want to install the steering stabilizer bracket. It goes on top of the cross member but uses the same bolts. I did not do that on mine because I was going to add new steering components later and install that later. But had I known what I know now, I would have installed the steering stabilizer bracket and just left the rest of the parts off. Okay, just torque this down to 90 foot-pounds, all the bolts. Now we'll install the driver's side bracket, which is actually on the passenger side. I've got all my bolts through. Since the engine was jacked up, I have all my bolts through, and I'm going to put the bracket on and scribe my holes. As you can see, I've got one marked there, and there's two. So on this one, I marked one more hole. And I kept the engine raised up just because I didn't want to risk drilling into my oil pan from underneath. Okay, same as the other one. Get your bolts in. The only difference on this one is the bolts come through from the top, and you just want to torque them down to 90 foot-pounds. Now we're going to reinstall the I-beams into the brackets, and the driver's side I-beam will get the bolt. It will go through and point towards the back of the van, and the passenger side I-beam will come from the back and point to the front, and that's for clearance reasons. And you will be torquing these down to 135 foot-pounds. Just don't do it yet. Wait until the van has weight on it and it's sitting at ride height. In this step, we're going to find out if the I-beam makes contact anywhere with the new bracket that you just installed, and if it does, you're going to have to clearance or shave off some of the metal so that it has room to articulate up and down and not hit the bracket. So start by jacking up this driver's side knuckle all the way till it hits the bump stop. And you know it's never going to go that far because I haven't even lowered the bump stops yet, but you can see right here, well before it hits the bump stop, it's making contact. So that's the spot that I'm going to have to clearance. You can see there's a little rub mark right there. So I'm just drawing a line of where I'm gonna clearance. Probably won't need to go this deep, but that gives me an idea on how I need to clearance it. So let's get the grinder and get to work. Now you don't want to take off too much. I did several times where I clearanced it and then checked it and it was still touching a little bit, so I took it down, took a little more off. Just keep taking a little more off each time until it can go up and down with no interference at all. And this time I was able to go all the way to the bump stop with no contact at all. And that's what it looks like. Now you're definitely going to want to paint it so that it doesn't get rusty. So I'm cleaning it off with some alcohol, and then I'm going to paint it. Okay, and that's it. You've clearanced your I-beam.
Just put the spring on the bottom perch like that. You're going to want this straight across the front like this. And then raise up your I-beam. Get the spring in there. There it is.
Now, using that existing spring retainer clip, I want to just hook that across that straight part on the spring and put the existing bolt that you took off earlier. It's a 10 millimeter, and tighten it down. All right, depending on which brand of shocks you have, this procedure might be a little bit different, but I got the Bilsteins, but you might have got the Fox shocks or the King shocks. So I can only talk about the Bilsteins. But on the Bilsteins, you'll have two different sleeves for two different size of mounting hardware that go on the bottom. So find the bolt that comes with the kit and make sure that you put the right sleeve in the bottom of the shock so that your bolt fits through. So I just pressed it in with some channel locks, but you can use a vise or several other ways that you could do this. Just make sure your bolt fits before you install it, and there you go. Then assemble the top. You just want to put on this big washer and then put on your bushings with the little nub facing up, and then on the top one you'll face it down. That's it, it's ready to install. So you just want to have your suspension fully drooped as far as that spring will let it go down, and then you should be able to get the shock in. Just get that top portion pushed up and through the hole in the top spring perch, and then get that bottom lined up for the bolt. My bolt was a little bit stubborn to get through, so I had to use a hammer to get it through. Just a few taps and I got it in. Okay, now to tighten the top, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. These shocks, the Bilsteins, did not have a nut on the top. So I used a pair of vice grips and clamped it onto the shaft at the very top. I wasn't worried about marring it up because the shaft will never go all the way into the shock body, so you don't really have to worry about that. And then I used my flex head wrench to tighten it down. There's another way you can do it if you have the right size Allen wrench. I have one that's cut real short, so I can use it there. I did use this on the passenger side, but it didn't work on the driver's side. It was too hard to get in there. So use the vice grips on the driver's side and the Allen wrench on the passenger side. So you just want to tighten it down until you just compress those bushings on the top. Just start to compress them. Don't smash them so that they're, coming out the side. Just compress them a little bit so that they hold it in there tight, and that's it. Now we need to modify how the bump stops are mounted, because where they're mounted on the frame is too high. It will allow the I-beam to go up too far. So we're just going to put a spacer in there to get the bump stop down as far as it can go. And the first step is you got to cut off that nub. That little nub is a locator pin that you won't need anymore with the new relocation bracket. I just zipped it off with a grinder. Okay, you're just going to bolt the bump stop to the bracket. Just put a washer in there and a nut. Tighten it down. I did it outside the vehicle, but I think you can mount that bracket to the vehicle and then add the bump stop. You could do it either way. Okay, once you get it on there tight, then you can just mount the bracket back up to the frame in the existing position and use the bolt that you removed from the original bump stop. That's what's going to hold it to the frame. And there you go. Okay, now I just want to go through and torque down all of the front end components that might be blocked by the steering later on. So first I started with the motor mounts to 66 foot-pounds. And click. Okay, the brackets for the radius arms where they go to the frame, torque those to 90. Click. And these big monster bolts that hold the radius arm to the I-beam, these got to be torqued to 250. My gun got them close, and then I just needed to put the torque wrench on it. And click. Okay, these torque to 185. These are the bolts that hold the radius arm to the bracket. Next step, we're going to install the pitman arm. And in order to get access to the shaft and the bolt, you're going to have to loosen those 3 bolts holding the steering gear to the frame. So just loosen those up. You might have to take 1 or 2 of them completely out, and then you can shift the steering gear a little bit like I'm doing here. And then you just want to put the pitman arm. It can only go on one way because there's 4 flat spots in the splines. Just line it up to where you get them on the flat spots and put it on. The pitman arm is held on by a nut and a lock washer. So you need those 2 pieces. Those parts are what you took off before. So you just want to get them on there, tighten that down to about 200 foot-pound. Now before you can really torque this down, you're going to have to tighten the 3 bolts on the side. So make sure you tighten those down, snug it up, otherwise your steering gear will move when you attempt to put that final torque on the nut. There you go. Now your steering's ready to be installed. Now I'm going to reinstall the sway bar bushing, and I just used a socket that fit on it and the air hammer just to push it in. This was pretty easy. And just like your bump stops, they have sway bar brackets that drop down the sway bar. So there's a top and a bottom and a left and a right. You can see where they're clearanced on the corners. That's going to be where they go up against the frame. There's a seam, like a welded seam, and you want to make sure that those clearanced parts goes up against the welded seam shown here. So how I did this is I just attached the bracket using the existing bolts that I removed, and you can see right here where the clearance part is on that seam on the frame. This is a good time to check your bushings. Mine are a little crusty and hard, so I'm going to replace them. I got the Moog bushings. Here's the part number in case you want to replace yours. Just pop off the old one and pop on the new one in its place. You don't have to get the bracket all the way on. It will get sucked up and compress the bushing when you tighten it. The ends, you want to make sure they're clean and don't have a bunch of crust on them or corrosion, because that'll tear up your new bushings. So clean them off and then put a little silicone spray on them to make them slide in nice and easy. Then just use the provided hardware to bolt the bushing to the drop bracket, and that's it. This next step is a lot easier if you're just going to reinstall your old steering components, but I chose to install all new steering components. So this is a setup from XRF, and I just tried to match it up to the old steering components as close as I could. You know, it's pretty close, just so I can make it fit, and then the alignment guys will take care of the rest. So how I do it: first, attach the drag link to the pitman arm and just let your other ones hang down wherever they go. But get that pitman arm on first, then makes it easier to line up the other ones and get them on. And you'll want to use new Castle nuts that are provided with the new steering components, or use your old Castle nuts if you're putting the old components back on. Now, thinking back, I would have put the Zerk fittings in first. You can see they're not in here. I would have put those in first before putting this in. But in my case, I didn't. I was kind of worried I would break them off while I was moving these steering components around. So I would suggest doing it first, and then it's a little bit easier because they're really small. They use an 8mm wrench to put them in, but you can do it under the car. Okay, you want to torque the collars to 41 foot-pounds. Alignment shop is going to unbolt these and probably redo them anyway, but you can just get them to 41. And then the castle nuts due to 65. Okay, now with the cotter pins, if the hole isn't lined up perfectly in your castle nut, go a little bit tighter. Don't go looser. So you may have to add a few foot-pounds to it to get it to go tighter to get the hole to line up. All my holes lined up pretty good. You always want to use new cotter pins. Don't reuse old ones. Then I just used a pair of side cutters to grab a hold of the cotter pin and bend it over. But you can use pliers or any number of other tools if you don't have these side cutters. Last step to the steering install is to just grease all your fittings. Get a good amount of grease in there just to help your tie rod ends last, and that's it. You're done with the steering install. Okay, now I move to the rear of the van, and this is how I set it up. I put a 12-ton jack stand in front of the leaves on the frame, and then I have the little jack stands holding up the axles, and then I use my floor jack to raise and lower the axle. This was really easy. I mean, the whole front of the van took me like 30 hours. This took about 2 hours or maybe 1 hour. But you just unbolt the U-bolts and take them off, and you use the longer U-bolts with the blocks. For this video, I'm just going to focus in on the stuff that's Action Van installation specific, and that's mainly drilling out these shock mounts. So they need to be 14 millimeter or 9/16 to get the bolt to go through. The bolt that's provided will not fit the way it is. So you just want to drill it out. There's plenty of videos on the internet that show how to install lift blocks and shocks on the rear of these vans, so I didn't want to spend too much time doing that. But this is what it should look like when you're all done. You should have your new U-bolts, your block, and your shock. And that's it. Now you're ready to go to the alignment shop. I was super happy to be done with this install and get it over to the alignment shop, where the guys did a great job and got me out of there real quick. So if this video helped you with your install, like and subscribe. Really helps us out. Thanks for watching.